In the quiet town of Bellevue, Georgia, a forgotten name was about to resurface, and with it, the truth no one wanted unearthed. The afternoon sun spilled over the red brick buildings lining Main Street, warming the sidewalk where Elijah Carter stood outside the law offices of Cranston and Mays. He clutched a folded funeral program in his hand, white lilies embossed on the front, the name Margaret Elaine Cranston in gold script beneath. She had raised him since he was 6. He was here to grieve her, not to be erased by her legacy. But as he stepped inside, the mood shifted. The room was cool, clinical. Polished oak floors, sterile cream walls, a massive conference table that smelled faintly of leather and lemon oil. At one end sat Martin Cranston, the family's longtime attorney. Beside him were Elijah's adoptive siblings Bianca and Everett, both white, both biological children of the woman who once swore Elijah was her son, too. "Elijah," Martin said, barely nodding. "Thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult time." Elijah sat, silent. He didn't trust his voice. His fingers tightened around the program. Martin opened a file, cleared his throat, and began reading. "To my beloved children, I leave the home at 418 Crestwood Avenue. All assets and remaining investments to be divided equally between Bianca and Everett." Silence. Elijah blinked. "Is that it?" Martin hesitated. "I'm sorry. Your name wasn't included in the final revision of the will." The words hit harder than a punch. Bianca avoided his eyes. Everett looked smug, like a poker player who just won a bluff. "But she told me," Elijah began, voice low, disbelieving. Martin raised a hand. "The document was updated 3 weeks before her passing. This is the only valid copy. Signed, witnessed, and filed." Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Elijah said nothing more. He simply stood, nodded once, and walked out. That night, alone in the room that still smelled faintly of cedar and lemon balm, the room she had once painted for him, Elijah opened his laptop. He'd forgotten all about it. The camera. Weeks ago, when Margaret's health had begun declining, she'd asked him to install a discreet lens in her study. "Just for peace of mind," she'd whispered, voice weak. "Sometimes I feel like someone's been in my drawers." He never questioned her. He just did it. The footage was stored in a private cloud account. Elijah had locked it with an old password, "Safe with Mom." His fingers trembled as he typed it in. The video feed loaded slowly, and then it appeared, time-stamped 8 days before her death. Margaret Cranston sat at her desk, pale but composed. She looked into the lens. "This is for clarity," she said. "My will is final and signed. I wish for all I own to be divided equally among my 3 children, Everett, Bianca, and Elijah. Yes, Elijah Carter. My son." She held up a folder. "This document is witnessed, dated, and stored here in my desk. If this disappears, no, I never change my wishes." Elijah sat frozen. The next clip was dated 3 days later. The door opened. Martin Cranston entered, alone. He moved with confidence, opened the desk drawer, found the folder, took it out, slipped it into his briefcase, replaced it with a new version. He was not alone. A shadow appeared. "Everett. Done?" he asked. Martin nodded. "They won't know." Elijah stared at the screen. His heart didn't race. It thudded, slow and steady, like a countdown to something inevitable. This was not a mistake. It was a theft. Of truth. Of legacy. Of a mother's love. He copied the videos onto a flash drive, tucked it into his jacket, and walked out of the house. The next morning, he returned to the law office. Martin Cranston looked up, startled. "Elijah, I assumed you." Elijah said nothing. He placed the flash drive on the desk. "What is this?" the lawyer asked. "Clarity," Elijah replied. Martin reached for the drive. Elijah stopped him. "Before you watch that, think carefully about the last time you were in my mother's study." Martin's face changed. "Barely, but enough. She asked me to install a camera," Elijah said quietly. "Turns out, she had good instincts." The lawyer's hands trembled as he reached again for the drive. "I suggest you restore the original will," Elijah continued, "before I send that to the state bar, the police, and every news outlet in Bellevue." Martin stared at him, pale. Finally, he nodded, wordless. Elijah turned and walked out. He wasn't here for revenge. He was here for the truth. A week later, the Cranston siblings, the attorney, and Elijah gathered again in that same conference room. The tension hung thicker this time. Elijah stood at the far end of the table. Alone. Again. But different now. He held the flash drive in one hand. "This needs to be part of the record," he said simply. He plugged it into the large screen on the wall. The first video played Margaret's voice, clear, unwavering. "Among my 3 children." Yes, Elijah Carter. Bianca gasped. Everett cursed under his breath. Martin sank in his chair. Then the second clip played. Martin's break-in. The switch. Everett's involvement. Silence swallowed the room. "You tried to erase me," Elijah said quietly. "You almost succeeded." The door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. "Mr. Cranston," one asked. Martin looked up. This is a misunderstanding." But no one listened. He was escorted out in handcuffs. The original will was reinstated. The court opened an inquiry. The media called it a betrayal of the public trust. Martin's law license was suspended. Criminal charges followed. Everett vanished from social media. Bianca sent a single email weeks later. "I didn't know. I should have said something. I am sorry." Elijah never responded. He didn't need to explain himself anymore. Margaret had done that already with her words, her camera, and her unwavering belief in him. Months passed. The Bennett house, his mother's house, stood quietly at the edge of town, its windows catching the early winter sun. But Elijah didn't live there. He had opened a small office downtown. Nothing flashy, just a rented space with white walls, old furniture, and a single sign on the glass door, Carter Justice Foundation. Inside, 2 desks, a bookshelf lined with case files, and a mission to help others like him. People erased by lies. People dismissed because they didn't look like they belonged. People who needed someone to believe them. A teenage girl from the West Side came in one day, claimed her foster father had hidden her inheritance. Elijah sat across from her, listening carefully, never interrupting. When she finished, he leaned forward. "Let's find the truth," he said. Because that's what he did now. Not out of vengeance, but for restoration. One life at a time. One aim at a time. He remembered the judge's words during the final hearing. "Mr. Carter, in defending your mother's legacy, you've reminded us all that justice doesn't come from ink on paper, but from the courage to stand alone when the world pretends you were never there." Elijah Carter didn't see himself as brave, only as someone who refused to be forgotten. And in doing so, he gave voice to the voiceless. The past would never be perfect. The wounds would never fully vanish. But in every document he restored, in every lie he dismantled, Margaret lived on. And the truth? It was no longer hidden. It stood tall, with his name on it, and it whispered to anyone still listening, "You matter."